This is Shifting Our Schools, episode 97. Whack-a-mole is not a classroom management strategy that works.
Listen up, educators. Are you looking to take your classroom to the next level? The technological shift in education is happening right now. If you're looking to integrate technology into your classroom, you're in the right place. Welcome to Shifting Our Schools with your host, Jeff Udick.
Well, welcome back to another Shifting Our Schools. Thank you for listening, and I hope your October and all it brings with it is going well. October for me is always an exciting month. It's one of those months during the school year that there are a lot of PD days, which means for me a lot of training and a lot of time on the road. In fact, I'm traveling 14 of the next 17 days. That's how I know we're full into the school year. And for many of us, that probably means that report cards or student-led conferences or teacher-parent conferences are around the corner. And know that I'm thinking about you all in that time period. It's such a blast getting to work with teachers from all grade levels and across all subject areas. In fact, I had a teacher come to me today and say, "Do you ever miss the students?" And it was when we were doing an activity with a bunch of teachers today, and you just have that perfect hum of the classroom where engagement is so high that you just look around and smile. And I actually had to say, well, no, because every day I'm in this, I'm in my classroom. My students are older, but the learning is the same. The light bulb in people's eyes is the same. And I love the work that I do. And for me, that's part of it. And as I was driving from one school to the next today, I was just reflecting in the car. And I realized one of the things that I love most of when I'm working with educators and asking educators to reflect on an activity we just did and how they might adapt it to use in their own classroom or subject area is when we share out our ideas. I love it when teachers come up with ways of using the activity in ways I never thought of before. And it happens over and over again. I do the same activities, training after training, and yet almost every single day, a new teacher comes up with some way that no other teacher has ever thought about using that activity before. And I love that. That's that light bulb that we see go off in our kids' eyes. And I love that I get an opportunity to see that in educators' eyes across this globe. So I love when educators take that idea and float it and make it better and change it and adapt it and make it work for them. That's one of my favorite parts of doing the work that I do and the time that I spend on the road. Just having an amazing opportunity to meet with educators around the world and right now specifically here in my home state for the next 17 days. Also on the drive today, I was reflecting on another conversation I continue to have with schools, technology directors, school leaders, and educators, and that is the idea of student monitoring software. You know, the software that allows teachers to see what students are working on in real time, where teachers can sit at their own computer and see 20 little screens and be able to watch everything that students are doing. Over the years, this technology has gone from allowing teachers just to see what students were doing on their devices to giving teachers full control to close tabs, shut down computers, or push things out to students, to see what applications they have on their devices that aren't even used, and even look at their screens so they can't cheat or lock their screens, so they can't cheat while taking an online test or quiz. Now, for years, I've had major issues with this software. I understand that many districts need it to comply with state and federal laws. Yes, if you are in a public school, it is law that you track students and employees for that matter. In fact, most businesses I talk to track in some way what their employees are doing on a business-issued laptop or computer. It just makes sense. I totally get it. So first off, let's start with talking to students. Let's tell students that. Let's tell students we are recording every website you visit, every click that you make on your device, not because we don't trust you, but because that's what businesses do. They track me too. Yes, teachers, everything you do on your school-issued device is tracked. It has to be, especially if you're a public employee. It is requirement by law. So we get that. This is the way work is done in the 21st century. Do your students know that? Do students know that it's not a trust thing? It's a law thing? I really believe it's important for students to understand that and for students to know that this is relevant information for when they are out of school as well. That is transferable knowledge to the workplace. Understand that if you are on a device owned by a company or corporation, everything you do on that device is probably being tracked in some way. It's well worth the time to have that conversation with students. Next up, educators, please stop using this software as a way to punish students. I call it playing whack-a-mole because that's what it reminds me of. You remember the game they used to play at Chuck E. Cheese or whatever pizza place where you're from, where you would go over and the little moles would pop their heads up and you'd have a hammer that you'd whack them back into the hole? That's what this reminds me of. And today, for an example, at my training, as we were starting the training, and I'm walking around the classroom and watching teachers set up, I had 3 teachers who were using this software. They had it open on their devices, watching their students in second period work on assignments in their classroom. If a student went off task, aka away from the screen the teacher thought they should be on, they would just close the tab. No conversation, no follow-up with the student, just whack, get back to work. Whack, stop going there. Whack, that's not what you're supposed to be doing. Playing whack-a-mole is not a classroom management strategy. Playing whack-a-mole does not change behavior. It does not support learning. It is not a transferable skill. It's nothing more than a method to say, I don't trust you. A teacher who plays whack-a-mole needs classroom management strategies. There is something bigger going on in a classroom if there is a teacher sitting at a desk behind a screen doing nothing more than monitoring what students are doing on devices. Every time I see this happen in my trainings or hear teachers talking about how great it is to have this software, I can't help but cringe for the students in those classrooms. I want you to put yourself, if you can, in the student's shoes. Pretend for a second you're a 7th grader, just for a second. What's going through your mind as you open a new tab and you go somewhere and all of a sudden that tab is closed without a teacher even knowing or understanding what you were doing? How does this behavior break trust and relationship building in our classroom? And here's what I've heard from schools. If this type of behavior from teachers goes unchecked, students just stop using devices. They learn ways to work around it because there is software out there that allows you to get around this software. They open up incognito modes in Chrome, or they find some way to get offline. And if that doesn't work, they just stop bringing their school-issued device altogether and bring their device from home, otherwise known as their cell phone, on a data plan, and now we have no monitoring of that student whatsoever while on school ground doing school work. That's the real issue here, is that once we break that trust with students, it is really hard to get back. Now, there's another way to use this software, and that is to build relationships with students, to start conversations, to help them with time management. You know, that thing that we don't teach and we just expect every student to know how to do? That is what this software is great for. Here's a story I like to tell educators. I was working in a school district here in the state of Washington where they had implemented some of the software. And I have this exact same conversation with every group of educators that I know is installing the software. And in this case, we'd had this conversation about please do not use this software to punish students, to monitor students, but use this software to start conversations with what students are doing. When I came back for the next training, I had one of these teachers, actually, they shared out to the entire group of how they had used the software to start a conversation with a student. And here's the story that they told me. The story goes, they were watching their students. They had the software open on their screen. And for the majority of students, just knowing you have the software is enough to keep them on task. Let's just admit that. You don't even have to do anything. Just knowing you have the software is enough to keep most kids from doing the wrong thing. But she was walking around this room, great classroom management strategy. And as she came back by her desk, she noticed that one of the students had another tab open, and it was the old Centipedes game. For those of you that remember, the centipede comes down the screen and you're trying to shoot the centipede into pieces. So she had an option. She could either A, play whack-a-mole and shut down this game that the student wasn't currently playing. It was just open in the tab next to the student actually doing the work. Or she could have a conversation with that student. She chose to have a conversation with that student. And so she walked over to the student, and the way she tells the story is she pointed to the tab and said, I see that you have this open. And the student went on to explain that his mom drops him off to school an hour before school starts because mom has to go to work. And so he starts playing this game on the school Wi-Fi before school starts, and he's gotten really good at it. And so he's getting so good that he's going to beat the high score. But school starts, and so he pauses the game. He then goes through school doing his schoolwork, but his mom doesn't pick him up until an hour and a half after school is over, to where he starts playing the game again to try and beat the high score. Now, think about that teacher for a second and the relationship opportunity she now has with this student. If you are the teacher that just plays whack-a-mole and shuts that tab down, you do not get to have this insight into a student who is just spending time trying to get better at a game, who has 2.5 hours of unstructured time before and after school that they're using to play a game. She chose the opportunity to have a conversation with the student and then was able to follow up with this student day after day. How are you doing on that game? Did you break the highest score? What's the next game you're going to try and beat? And think about the conversation you can have with kids on why that tab is open. Why did you feel the need to go to that website now? Why did you feel the need to open a new tab? Let's get kids to reflect on the reason why they feel the need to be off task. And here's a couple little ideas. One, if students are off task, there's something wrong with the task. Either it's not engaging or you gave students too much time. Those are the two things that I usually find happen when kids open new tabs on their devices. How can we use this software to start real, honest conversations with students in our classroom? I don't hate the software. I hate the way we use it to play whack-a-mole with kids and break the trust that is so critical to a positive classroom environment. In the end, I understand why we have this software. I understand it's needed, and I want schools and educators to protect themselves, to protect their schools, and to protect their students. But I want this software to come with a caution sticker. And that caution sticker should read, caution, this software is not a classroom management strategy. Until next time, I'll see you on the network.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Shifting Our Schools with your host, Jeff Udick. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit sospodcast.org, facebook.com/Jeff Udick, and on Twitter @JUdick. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a review and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time on Shifting Our Schools.